What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another daytime show here on the No Ceilings YouTube channel, and you will be hearing this on the podcast feed as well. I'm Stephen Gillespie of the Draft Sicko Show, and today I'm here to do what we've been doing since the beginning of the March Madness tournament. We're going to be recapping the games that were, and we're going to preview the games that are coming up tonight. We've been doing these little videos or podcasts the same day as the game, in order for you to be prepared for what's ready to come, right? Have some additional insight on what to look for in this game. Maybe NBA prospects that you're excited to watch. Maybe tales of the tape. What worked last week? How can we apply that to the game tonight? All that jazz. Before we get started, though, again, I'm going to call out, you might recognize that I'm flying solo. That's actually a good thing today because we have so much going on behind the scenes over at No Ceilings. For starters, I just received word that we have people who are entering planes right now to fly up and watch the Hoop Summit. And we're going to give you an in-depth insight that you're only going to get over at NoCeilingsNBA.com from our team. Not only that, we have a big board that's going to be dropping very, very soon. We have people who are working on that. And we have people such as myself who are going to be getting ready to go to Portsmouth next week. So very busy time over at No Ceilings. We're going to continue to provide you guys with the insight that you've been getting all the way up through this point in the tournament. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, you might recall that someone very smart predicted that Florida was going to beat Auburn by 6, and that's exactly what happened. Florida beat Auburn 79-73. I spoke to as kind of like the keys to the game that Walter Clayton Jr. was probably going to make some big plays. And if Auburn was going to win, everyone outside of Janai Broome would have to be next to perfect. Now, we'll dive into how I stumbled into somehow being correct on the 6-point thing, like what played into that. I'm not going to brag about it because I'm incredibly humble, but we'll dive into some of these reasons as to why it worked out for Florida in this game, because Florida had a great first correction. Auburn had a very strong first half. It looked like they were in prime position to win this game. And overall for the game, they were +4 in assists over Florida. They actually were +4 in points in the paint. They had 4 more steals than Florida. They tied Florida on blocks, but they had 2 fewer turnovers. That's about it, though. Florida was actually more efficient from the floor. They were 4% better from the floor overall. They were +10% on threes while making 1 more three-pointer than Auburn on 4 fewer attempts. So more efficient night for the Florida Gators here. They were only 0.4% better from the line. Neither team was specifically great there. And they shot 7 more free throws than the Auburn Tigers. Another thing, they were +9 on the glass, and they fouled 7 fewer times. So some typical keys to winning: rebounding. Florida had the advantage. Foul less, shoot more free throws. That was there. Florida inserted themselves into this game in key moments. And I want to start by saying a lot was made of the officiating, both in this game and in particular the next game that we're going to be talking about here soon. I feel like officiating is like the easiest thing to get upset about in sports, particularly college basketball. We we lament officiating in pro sports all the time. There's a reason why the officials in the pro sports and the collegiate officials are where they are. It's going to obviously be a step down. Now, in real time, I'm not a fan, or are there specific players that I'm rooting for in either of these games? Yes, because I am an NBA draft guy. I want to see the prospects put on a good show. But in real time, I didn't feel like any calls were just like inexplicable, or unforgivable in real time. It didn't feel like there was a major push in either direction in the officiating. Now, I'm sure there might be some people who feel differently. That's okay. Just explaining how I feel about that. Let's talk about the star of this game, though, and probably the player who is the star of the tournament. You've probably seen his name on ESPN recently, on any other sports show, comparing him to names like, it went from the night of the game, Walter Clayton Jr. was getting compared to guys like Peyton Pritchard, Fred VanVleet, if you listen to other podcasts, you might have heard like a Jamal Murray. If you're watching these talking head shows, you started hearing like Dame Lillard and Steph Curry. Walter Clayton Jr. had a phenomenal game. There's no doubt about that. He is, I think the talking head shows are going to kill a little bit of the love that he has in his game, which is unfortunate because Walter Clayton Jr. against Auburn, he became the first player since Larry Bird to drop 30 in the Elite Eight and then the Final Four. He finished this night with 34 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists, was 11 of 18 from the floor, 5 of 8 from deep, and 7 of 7 from the free throw line. And he was really one of only 2 guys from Florida who was consistent on both ends of the floor the entire night. He hit some key threes in the first half to keep them in striking distance, to that help prime Florida for their consecutive second half onslaught that we've used to seeing. And I'm going to take a break real quick from this analysis just to thank you everybody for coming and hanging out. We're starting to get some people in the chat and I'm starting to see the viewers numbers climb. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Eric Olson in the chat said he's more athletic than you might think. I agree. And there's a number of ways you can measure athleticism. For those who follow No Ceilings, my co-host and I, Maxwell Bombach, and myself talked about a lot of the guys that we're going to be talking about today. If you're not familiar, go look up podcasts anywhere you get them. No Ceilings NBA. Maxwell and I did a show yesterday on Draft Sickos where we talked about Walter Clayton Jr. And to Eric's point here, I think that there are different types of athleticism. He's not like the nuclear athlete that you'll hear John Morant or a young Dame Lillard, that type of a guard, or Russell Westbrook or a prime Derrick Rose. He's not that type of guy, but he is flexible and he is strong. And I think that's where I put Walter Clayton's athleticism kind of in that bucket. So thanks for the comment there, Eric. Back to the game. Many of Walter Clayton Jr.'s shots have long been difficult, even dating back to his time at Iona. And this game against Auburn was no different. If you look, he had a lot of looks in pick and roll that were he pulled up off a motion, whether he was dribbling or catch and shoot. What really stood out to me, though, was the varied scoring approach because he was 5 of 8 from deep in this game, but he was 6 of 10 overall from the floor. He had some kind of strong, like, inside hand, same foot finishes to where he's driving left but shooting with his right hand off of his right foot. And he's getting the shot up sooner than I think the defense would anticipate a ball handler, a shooter, or a driver to initiate their shot. The shot is coming out of his hands at a kind of off-tempo, awkward timing for the defense to really time, because if you want to sell out on a shot like that from Walter Clayton, he can initiate the shot in such a way that where if you bite hard, he can continue to drive while still somehow working in this beginning phases of a shooting motion. His impact to me was really felt more in the second half when you started getting into the crunch time situations, and the commentary even did a really good job of calling this out. There were consecutive possessions back to back to back where he didn't touch the ball, and that's where you really started to feel like Auburn could mount a comeback in the second half. Ultimately, though, the ball continued to find Walter's hands, and he did enough to put the game away because Florida and Coach Golden did a really good job of correcting for this. Some other coaches that we're going to be talking about here soon didn't really correct in the manner that what we saw from Todd Golden, but the ball ended up getting back into Walter Clayton Jr.'s hands, and that's really what put the game to bed. One of the funnier moments of the night, talking about Saturday, was when a lot of people were running to Twitter to celebrate how high they had Walter Clayton Jr. On their boards. And, Nate Duncan, NBA, was going off to say, how people were running to brag about that. But that's kind of the fun part about watching March Madness is, okay, these prospects that the mainstream may not be as high on, they're starting to fall in love with these types of players. What's interesting, though, on top of just that comment is that how Corey Tulaba of No Ceilings, he does these draft rankings where he kind of aggregates where, like Bleacher Report, ESPN, The Athletic, and us, like where we have all these prospects, and we'll create a list and just show where consensus is on these types of players. Walter Clayton Jr. actually came in at 45th, which I was surprised to see, like an aggregated amount of rankings, him be that high. The highest of those rankings he was at 30, but the low is 63. And March is only, a week away from today. I think it's interesting to see how March Madness, really lives up to its name at some points, because just a week ago, he was 45th among consensus. And now we are going to see people such as myself. I'm going to throw myself in here too. I now have him at 24th, which I disclosed on our last show. He's really making it hard and really making himself undeniable. He's being loud at one of the most important parts of the draft cycle. He's being loud with his performance. And you're really going to see that benefit. If you listen to enough podcasts, you watch enough shows, you will see that Walter Clayton will no longer be at 45 among consensus. You're going to start seeing him make noise to be a legitimate first-round pick. Let's talk about another guy who is on this Florida Gators team that I love, and the gears are turning. If you're paying attention, the wheels are turning for Elijah Martin. You've heard me talk about him for a while now. If you follow me at Twitter at Steven G Hoops, you've seen me tweet about him. But now you're starting to hear your Sam Vicinis and Kevin O'Connors of the world really start to chime in and put this Elijah Martin bandwagon in motion. And it's beautiful to see. He had a great night. He had 17 points, 3 rebounds, 1 steal, 6 of 10 from the floor, 2 of 3 from deep, 3 of 3 from the line. And he was the primary defender on Denver Jones and Tahad Pettiford throughout the game. You want to know the night that they had? Jones was 3 of 9 from the floor. Tahad was 1 of 6. Now that sucks, but it's good at the same time because I love Elijah Martin. So I love seeing him put the clamps down on these guys. But being a Tahad Pettiford guy, I was conflicted because I was celebrating what Elijah was doing. And I was really upset to see how Tahad played his last game. Overall, I'm still very high on Tahad. But back to Elijah Martin. There were a number of nasty dunks, which is going to be the thing that, and it was on social media afterwards. You really started seeing these highlight reel dunks that Elijah was able to do. That's a really important aspect to have to your game, especially when you're like a sub 6'4" guard projecting to go to the NBA. You want to have nuclear athleticism. You want to have that ability to get out on the break, throw it down, and be emphatic about it. You want to have that ability. That's a nice thing to have. What I really love, though, in evaluating this game was, even though he only had 3 rebounds, they might have been the 3 most important rebounds of the game. And I think rebounding above his weight class in those key moments was phenomenal. The commentary also spoke to how well he had performed on the inbounds play too. And if you remember what happened to Duke, we know how important inbounding is and presenting yourself open can be. And whenever Elijah was able to get the ball, advance it up the court, draw the foul, and get to the free throw line, another advanced way that you're closing the game. You're making these winning plays. And Elijah was able to do that. I loved seeing what I saw from him. It's the things that he does sound easy. They don't sound like a superstar, which I'm not suggesting that he is. But I do think that you're going to read this in my piece that's going to be coming out over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. You're going to see it on social media. He's just a winning guy. You got to get some of these losers that are on your big boards just kind of out of the way for a guy like Elijah Martin. Let's talk about some more Florida teammates here. Thomas Hawk had 25 minutes off the bench and kind of had a wishy-washy game compared to what we had been seeing. This guy has been on a white-hot rise as of late, burning himself a draft, storming up draft boards, let's say. On the night, he had 12 points on 4 of 7 shooting from the floor. He was only 1 of 4 from 3, 3 of 7 from the free throw line, did have 7 rebounds, had 2 blocks, 1 assist, and a steal. Now, his typical energy was there. The things that you love about Thomas Hawk overall is that how he will just play hard the entire night. It was there. He did spend most of his time defending Janai Broom and Shady Johnson. That put his toughness to the test. I was very curious to see how he was going to fare. He did better than most others would, but there were some possessions where he was just flat out outmuscled, and then he out-hustled his way to like some rebounds or contested shots and was able to be impactful in some strong moments, to include this monstrous and one opportunity that he created for himself where you heard it away from the camera, him just screaming and one. And it was one of the few moments throughout the night that I leapt up out of my chair. And I'm not a leaper of chair type guy, but that and one was phenomenal to see. He did miss a free throw though. He did have his customary 4 fouls, and I think that this is the type of game that you watch with the Thomas Hawk and you worry about the projection because the defense was inconsistent. It wasn't its normal strong self. The shot, which we talked about yesterday on Draft Sickos, which is out available on your podcast. I talked about this on Saturday for the preview and the recap show. The shot just takes a while to come off, and it's games like this where you can see a well-coached team like a Bruce Pearl coaching Auburn. You can see how the three-point shot isn't necessarily going to be how he is going to get by, at least right now at the next level. He's an effort guy. He's a defender. He's a scrapper. He's a hustler. But we did see the handle that I have kind of questioned him on recently. The handle did come into effect where Auburn did kind of give him an opportunity to dribble along the perimeter and just kind of dare him to do something. A lot of times he just had his back to the defense and looked to hand the ball off to somebody else. And that's okay. Not everybody is going to be a drive and initiate guy. It's just that when you're looking to project at the next level for the NBA, which is what I like to do, you notice little things like that. And overall, he was the only other Florida Gator outside of, Martin and Walter Clayton Jr. that scored in double figures. And he had some very key moments. So you want to recognize that. I want to touch on Alex Condon and Will Richard just quickly. They both combined for 1 of 11 from the floor. They were 0 of 4 from deep, and they were 6 of 9 from the free throw line. Even though that those efficiency numbers and counting stats they're just not good. Let's just put it that way. Let's speak bluntly. We're adults. There's just not what you want to see. There's not much you can glean from those numbers and say, that's what I want to see. Outside of those numbers, they did contribute on some winning plays, especially Alex Condon, which I don't know if there's anything out on his medical status right now, if he's playing hurt. But there are a lot of people such as myself who are watching these games and think he just doesn't look right. He's not playing the same way. I don't know if there's anything going on there, but it's clear that what we're watching now has not been the consistent performance that we have grown used to seeing. He did have some very good shot contests to really challenge Auburn in the clutch moments of the game, to include that Chad Baker-Mazara shot that it forced a travel. That's exactly what happened. That's what that closeout did. It forced a travel. And you need that type of play in a close game. And there was another one that was similar to that. Will Richard had this dig out play where he was contesting, I think it was Shady Johnson. I don't have it in my notes. I'm just kind of going off a recall here, to where a member of the Auburn Tigers got an offensive rebound. Will Richard was kind of digging it out, forced a turnover. And you need that type of stuff too. So even though the scoring wasn't there, those two did make some winning plays. And I at least want to recognize that. Now let's talk about Auburn. Chad Baker-Mazara, I talked on the turnover and the clutch moment of the game that you didn't want to see. He actually had a really nice game. 18 points, 4 steals, 2 assists, 1 block, and 1 rebound. The shot was falling. He didn't have a lot going on inside the arc, though. He was active on defense, and he definitely, had some intense moment of the game. And I think at one point he yelled, "I'm born for this, say crap." He definitely was feeling himself earlier on in the game, and he's the thermometer, I want to say, of Auburn, to where he's not the thermostat to where he sets the temperature, but if you want to know how hot or cold the room is, look at Chad Baker-Mazara. He's going to be your indicator. He's your thermometer. And in the first half, you can tell that the room that that they were sweating out there, and he was definitely one of the reasons behind that. The 18 points were great, but they came in waves. It definitely wasn't like a constant pour out of offense. And Janai Broom, let's talk about him. He went for 15.7 rebounds, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and 2 assists, 6 of 14 from the floor, missed both of his 3-point attempts, and he was 3 of 7 from the line. It felt like he was probably the most consistent throughout the majority of the game. And you can see that he was kind of favoring his arm, where it made sense when we watched him play. The commentary did a really good job of talking about the conditioning not being there because he didn't really get to practice throughout the week. Saw him get winded. You saw him kind of favoring that arm. You saw why the injury status went the way that it did. It's not like an NBA injury status that we just get so accustomed to that where we hear when we're immediately skeptical. Janai Broom was definitely playing a little bit banged up, and it showed. He just didn't get much help outside of Chad Baker-Mazara. We talked about Denver Jones had 10, but he was inefficient. You heard the efficiency numbers earlier. Same for Pettiford. Cardwell had some decent moments defensively, but there were some blunders out there. There was some Shackton to full type moments. There was an opportunity for him to kind of demonstrate his ability to switch out momentarily, like a show and recover type defense, and he just didn't get there, and Florida capitalized on that. I want to say Auburn had a great season. I want to give them a lot of credit for advancing farther than I think a lot of people were anticipating. They did have a roster that was built to run deep. They did have a roster that was built with experience. I will say that if you look at the teams that are playing tonight, the guard play experience really showed for Auburn, who, again, Denver Jones is phenomenal. He's an upperclassman, but Tahad Pettiford did not have the typical Tahad Pettiford game. I think he's going to be better for this game in the long run to experience some adversity, to be able to kind of have a sobering look at his game and where he needs to improve in a losing effort, not to where he can kind of get by on a win because of the effort of his teammates around him. But he can look at this game and say, okay, if I want to get better, these are the areas that I need to get to improve on. Overall, I'm still very high on him. Still very high on Janai Broom. And let's go ahead now. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll discuss the next game. We're going to start with giving some love to a Houston team that I have constantly slept on. I think a lot of people have. But we'll take a break real quick. We'll come back and cover that game. All right, so if you remember my first prediction that we recapped, I proudly predicted a 6-point win for Florida over Auburn. I don't really want to talk about my prediction for how I thought Houston and Duke was going to go, but I'll do it. I had Duke winning the game by 12. I was very confident in Duke. I thought that they were going to be too big. I thought Houston was going to finally pay for not being a big team. I thought that Duke was going to have the right level of experience at certain positions, even though they do have a 3-headed freshman monster that was walking into this team. I was really feeling Coach Shire's improvements from his first year last season to coming into here. In this year, I was really feeling Duke coming in. I was looking ahead to Duke versus Florida. And Coach Sampson just kind of reminded us why that's a dumb thing to do, just like he's done every week in March Madness. But even though I was wrong in the overall game prediction, I still feel like I'm right in some of my player analysis. We'll cover that. But first, again, Duke shot 2% better from the floor than Houston. They were +4 in free throws. They were +4 in assist. They had one more steal than the Cougars. They were +4 in points in the paint. And they had 4 more points off of turnovers while committing 2 fewer turnovers than their opponent. However, Houston made 3 more three-pointers than Duke. They had 2 more overall shots attempted, even though they were less efficient. So even though Duke was more efficient from the floor, the volume from Houston kind of won that game. They were +2 in blocks. What really killed Duke, though, was that Houston was +11 in the rebounds At one point, Duke led by as much as 14, but they watched Houston close out the game on a 9-0 run. I thought of a very funny drinking game, if you'll entertain me. I'm not advocating drinking, but sometimes I like to think of different drinking games, although I don't drink very often. I thought a very fun drinking game for this game would have been take a drink after anybody between these two teams fell on the floor. You probably would have had to go to the hospital for alcohol poisoning, though. Let's give some love to Houston. At least one player in particular. I want to give LJ Cryer, the former Baylor prospect, a little bit of love. He bounced back with a strong, efficient game. He had 26 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1 steal. 8 of 14 from the floor, 6 of 9 from deep, 4 of 6 from the free throw line. He made the first points of the game on a kickoff 3. He had this nice little stop on the drive, pivot, and float a shot over Tyrese Proctor. He manipulated Kaman Malawak, who has been lauded a lot this season for his ability to switch out and defend smaller guys on the perimeter. LJ Cryer took that to task. He made Kaman Malawak step all the way out on the perimeter on a switch, got him to bite on a pump fake because LJ Cryer can just shoot the lights out. Got Malawak to bite on that, and then got the ball down low to Roberts, who scored the ball. Had a big 3 in the corner over Cooper Flagg with about 2 minutes left in the first half. A big dribble 3 over Malik Brown with 32 seconds left to bring the game within 6 because, yes, Houston was trailing. He had another 3 off the bounce to start Houston's second half. He had a relocation 3 over Cooper Flagg at about the 17-minute mark. He had a DHO jumper at the 8-minute mark. He crossed Con Knipple and then lost this pretty little floater in the vicinity of Kaman Malawak, who just was not interested at all in contesting that shot. It just felt like from that beginning 3, it was going to be LJ Cryer's night. And Duke, who we've long lamented that they don't have a true point guard, you need a true point guard who can put the game on their back, who can make key plays in winning moments. You need that upperclassman guard to win. And I thought Tyrese Proctor might have been that guy. I was wrong. It was LJ Cryer. And was he great on defense? No, he really wasn't. But, hitting key shots in big moments, especially down the stretch to claw back in the game, that's why LJ Cryer is in the victory circle right now. And that's why Duke is preparing, to bring in prospects for next year. Their 3-headed monster of freshmen are probably all preparing for the NBA draft right now. Duke is going home. Let's talk about, I don't even have this in my notes, but I want to talk about JoJo Tugler, who had some very big moments. I was only going to talk about LJ Cryer. That was the only Cougar I had in my notes. JoJo Tugler showed some stuff. I was really impressed. He did have a boneheaded reach in on an inbound play, which led to a technical that I thought was really going to punish Houston. And I thought JoJo was going to be like the biggest villain in Houston for that play. Ultimately, though, it didn't really cost him. He did it. He had a tremendous offensive rebound whenever Duke, we're going to break this play down in a little bit, but Duke went to inbound the ball. They went to inbound the ball. It didn't happen. The ball got kicked out to Wilson for a 3. Cooper didn't box out JoJo Tugler, and Tugler made him pay. And D. Joda in the chat, shout out to everybody who's watching and interacting. D. Joda says, "Oh, poor Duke, going to have to go back to just the Boozer twins." Yeah, that's a very good consolation prize. I will say that I know it's customary, even for myself, to really just hate Duke. Unless you're a Duke fan, like everybody else doesn't like you. It's like being a Laker fan or a Yankee fan. There's just certain fan bases, the Dallas Cowboys to a certain extent, even though they don't really deserve it. There are certain fan bases that you're just not allowed to be sad, even whenever you just get your season and hopes and dreams crushed, out from underneath you. I will say that this has probably been the heaviest approval rating for a Duke team because of Cooper Flagg. I think Cooper Flagg has done a good enough job to even make people like Con Knipple, who we're going to talk about in just a second, who has a Duke face that nobody likes unless you're a Duke fan. Cooper just did a good job of painting over this Duke team with the whatever favorable color makes everyone happy. Cooper Flag brought it. So I will say that even though the Boozer twins, who are lighting it up outside of the draft world right now, I am a little bit more sad for Duke this year than probably I ever have. So I will put that out there. Let's talk about Djota. Impeccable timing, as always says. Kaman is super likable as well. Kaman Malawach is like an infectious personality type guy. But if you live in the draft world, you're going to hear people are suddenly rushing in with these Kaman Malawach takes that they've just never really liked his game, or they've noticed these flaws all year long. In the last week's recap that we had, I said Kaman Malawach had a very Kaman Malawach game against Alabama. I pointed to this play where Chris Youngblood and Grant Nelson, where he was kind of playing in between both of those guys and didn't really do anything. But overall, you got to be happy with the performance that he had against Alabama, because it helped Duke advance to the next stage. And there's a lot of stuff going on kind of behind the scenes that I won't really spill the beans on, because one, I'm just going to be regurgitating anything that you'll go out on social media and see. I don't want to do that. But if you want to be sensitive to Kaman Malawach in this moment in time because of stuff going on beyond basketball, I totally understand. I just want to analyze basketball. I think that he's not as clean as a projection for his archetype as he should be. And Eric Olson in the chat says, we shouldn't overreact to one game. Eric, I agree. If the foundation of your Kaman Malawach take comes from just this recent game and a loss, you should not, 100% you should not overreact. I'm not going to do that. Anyone who's listening to me knows that I'm not about to overreact to just one game. The things that I've been skeptical on with him for the majority of the season, like really bore fruit. He didn't have any rebounds. And it's not that he didn't have any rebounds. There were some specific possessions where Cooper Flag tried to tip rebounds to Kaman Malawach. Like one in particular where Cooper tried to tip him one, and Malawach had Milos Uzan and Javier Francis contending him. Francis is a very good front court player, nowhere near in the same orbit in height or weight, I would say, as Kaman Malawach. He didn't come down with the rebound. Like completely got shut out of a rebound on a volleyball-esque like tip over to you so you can please come down with this rebound. Didn't come down with it. Okay, so 0 rebounds, and I won't touch on that again. Now, he did have one moment where he had like this no-dip dunk over Emmanuel Sharp. This happened immediately after I sent a message to our No Ceilings group chat where I said it kind of drives me crazy with how much Malawach can play smaller than he actually is. And I thought, okay, cool. Like perfect timing. You know, right when I'm about to criticize him for playing small, he's going to dunk over Emmanuel Sharp. I thought that this was going to be, okay, cool. Kaman's in this game. We didn't really see much more from him after that. You know, he did find a cutting Sion James in the second half that was fun to see, the decision-making where he took a dribble. He saw Sion James making a cut to the basket. I really loved that play. If you notice through this game, though, Houston was not afraid to go at him. If you want to beat him up on the no rebounds, that's one thing. Like, I think there's one game where, you know, Marc Gasol famously held Joel Embiid like scoreless either in a half or a game. I don't remember the intricacies of it. I didn't bother to look it up, but these kind of fluky things happen where statistically, like you can kind of get phased out of one area of the game. The rebounding was one thing. The lack of fear, and it's a Houston thing, sure. It's a culture thing. It's a Coach Sampson thing, sure. But Houston just was not afraid to go after him. You know, Juwan Roberts didn't mind going into him. Houston, even though they're smaller, they weren't afraid to look at this potential top 5 pick in the NBA and say, I think I'll stay away from him. As a matter of fact, they challenged him throughout the game. And this is why, again, I'm not out on Kaman Malawach, but I think it's okay, and I think it's fair. I think it's right. And if you cover the draft, you should speak on some of the things that kind of concern you with prospects. I don't think for the archetype that Kaman Malawach is slated to play at the next level, I don't think it's as clean as a fit as it should be. And I will tag this with historically, I am raising up my hand. I am late on guys like Derek Lively. I'm late and I miss on guys like a Walter Kessler. I historically undervalue these guys. This could be a complete scouting inefficiency on my part. But I get why some people are skeptical on Kamal Malawach, even though he has shown good footwork out in open space because of his soccer background. Like that's enough to draw me in. I do want to see improved strength. I do want to see like a nasty intensity on rotations to where he's not halfway defending a Chris Youngblood and a Grant Nelson and letting both of them do things that he should be stopping. Like, I don't know. Again, Eric Olson in the chat, don't overreact to one game. If you're making your take off of just this last game that we watched, you're probably not doing yourself the justice that you should be in analyzing the game. Now, if you watched yesterday's game and you feel like some of the takes that you had are justified and you're a little bit vindicated in that, like me, I'll just go ahead and be honest. I feel it doesn't, let's just say it doesn't help his stock. Now, D. Joda in the chat said, one of the things I always don't understand is when guys are usually so good on the offensive glass versus defense, is this a teammate coaching thing? Because Malawach's offensive rebound is huge, right? It is. It absolutely is. I think it's a strength thing right now. I think so much of his ability right now is the tools that he has, and he has been injected with the right amount of coaching. And I think right now too, where I think I heard it might have been on Game Theory with Sam Bassini, where teams are 4% better offensive, like rebounding on the offensive side when Malawach has been in the game throughout the year. It's a thing that exists with him. You see this sometimes with it's not a all that uncommon thing that people are specifically skilled on one side of the glass than the other. You know, is it possible that he just doesn't know how to interpret the projection of a ball off the rim? I don't know. Like there's a number of little nuanced based things that could be playing a part in this. But I do think, again, you got to remind yourself, I have to constantly remind myself that this young man has only been playing basketball for 4 to 5 years. And the fact that he's as good as he is, he's got the touch that he does, he can finish the way that he does. He has good passing instincts. If you care at all that he can shoot a three-pointer a few years down the road, that's kind of cool too. You know, there are just some things that I'm skeptical on. Again, I have him 12th. I don't hate his guts. I think he's lottery level talent. I would just worry. I would want him in an ecosystem where there are maybe one other big man around him to where he's not the base of your defense and you're throwing him out to the wolves or in shark infested water saying, go be the anchor right now, day one. I wouldn't want the ramp up to be gradual, but I do think the potential is there. He's so young. He's huge. Again, you can't teach size. That's the old adage. He's huge. So you have a framework there to work with. I just don't think that it's as cut and dry as some other people may be making it out to be. Cooper Flagg, let's not bury the lead anymore. The legacy game, so to speak, for Cooper Flagg. You know, how good is he actually going to be at the next level? Is he going to regret this game for the rest of his life? Is it going to impact ultimately how many All-NBA teams he's going to be on? You know, luckily, I'm not saying here half-heartedly, is he still the number one prospect? At least we haven't gone that far yet. I think it's going to continue to get debated a ton. You've probably already heard it if you're listening by now. That was he really that good in the game? How much blame should he get? Should he hold himself responsible? Are there, you know, is it his fault that they lost the game? Eric Olson in the chat, and I am kind of playing a little bit here. Eric said he did get burned on the perimeter. You bet your bottom dollar he did. He really did. There were possessions where he got burned on the perimeter. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, though. Let's not look at this game. This is why I say, Eric, when you mentioned in the chat earlier that we shouldn't overreact to one game. If we're going to say that for Kamal Malawach, let's do the same thing for Cooper Flagg. He has been awesome all season long, drawing comparisons in historical seasons to that of an Anthony Davis or Carmelo Anthony. Now, he's not going to go to the national championship game to even win one, so he's not going to have that historic or that magical of a season. And Eric in the chat says absolutely, referring to the holding all players accountable to the same standard. Salute to you, Eric. He's not going to have this unforgettable season that is going to be a Disney movie or anything like that. You know, he's not going to the final game of the season. He's the reason that Duke was in the game in the first place, and we need to hold him accountable for the plays that he blew. Okay. I think though the fact that we're starting to get these debates, that we're starting to see the Skip Baylesses of the world say, I'm going to do film and do like this legacy thing with Cooper Flagg. I think that that's actually good because that means that his star is burning brighter. Now, he did hit some shots that had absolutely no business going in. There was one shot where I forget who was contesting him, but he had so much English on the ball while getting fouled. I saw the ball go in. I'm like, there's just absolutely no way that he should be hitting this shots at 18 years old. None. There's no reason for him to be hitting the shots that he's hitting in order for Duke to even stand a fighting shot in this game, right? He hit a tough and one at about the 16-minute mark. That was sorely needed. You know, a KG catch and shoot three about a minute later. He had a nice cross and floater over JoJo Tugler, who we spoke about the highlight where Tugler jumped over his back for the putback dunk. Tugler got sauced by Cooper Flagg in this game, and I think that's weird. My printer just is screaming at me. Well, hang on while I turn this off. I think it's interesting, though, that we saw a lot more handle, in my opinion, in such a big game from Cooper Flagg to where he wanted to dribble, drive, and kick or drive and finish. I thought some of the stuff that he was doing with the ball in his hand as a creator was some of the best that we've seen from him, if not the best all season long, right? He had he had a big block on JoJo Tugler while they were up 9 with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left. So Cooper, even late in the game where I am going to discuss these plays that he just kind of was not what he had some rare mistakes that we just not have been used to seeing come from him in the latter portions of the game. Even in the midst of all that junk, he did have a block on Tugler while they were up 9 with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left. Now, he did give up the Emmanuel Sharp layup with about 10 seconds left in the game. That's a rarity. He did completely sell out on Emmanuel Sharp pump fake and relocate, sidestep for a three that Emmanuel hit to close the gap within 3 with about 35 seconds left of the game. He did hit that. That's a rarity. If you've watched Cooper Flagg, that's a rarity for him. He couldn't get the ball inbounded to him while Houston, I don't know why my printer is going crazy. Forgive me for this. They couldn't inball the ball to Cooper Flagg, which we already touched on that, which led to the 3-point shot going off and JoJo Tugler rebounding the ball and putting that back. And in the midst of all this, he gets called for this over the back foul that everyone got up in arms about. I didn't love the call. Also didn't mind it. Didn't hate it. It's a college basketball game. You're going to see calls like that. We can get into the discussion where we ask these referees who are not going to answer us, you know, is that the way that you want the game to be ended? Do you want to influence the game the way that you did? I don't know. Like, was he over his back? Yes. What was he boxed out really, really hard? Yes. Was he probably trying not to fall? Yes. Was there a potential that he got hooked? Yes. I think that you could have argued that call in so many different directions. The refs typically do inject themselves into a college basketball game, though. I didn't see it. It was a physical game. Was that the hardest hit of the night? No. So if you want to make the case that Houston was getting away with being a lot more physical than Duke, then that play, should that play have been called? Probably not. But I didn't see it as like oh my gosh, we should never let this guy referee again. The play that I do want to touch on, if you want to talk about the legacy moment for Cooper, was that he gets the ball to end the game. This is a superstar building moment for him. This could be the, MJ pull up, fist pump that you see on every Gatorade commercial that you ever saw growing up, right? This is the moment for Cooper Flag that you could have saw for him really cementing his legacy as one of the best college basketball players to ever play the game. You could have done that, right? I think because Cooper was relied upon so heavily, Con Knippel was really the only other guy that was able to help him throughout the game. I'm not going to break down Con very much. I did that last week. I didn't really touch on Cooper at all, so I'm kind of trading places with these guys, right? Cooper, I made a comment throughout the game. I sent out this tweet where I sent out the guy from Bedazzled, Brandon Fraser, this old, late 90s, early 2000s movie where this guy gets to make wishes or whatever. And one of these wishes, he wanted to be a famous athlete. He's a basketball player. He's kind of famously, like hilariously, like profusively sweating to where it looks like a garden hose is coming out of his face. Cooper reminded me of that, to obviously not that exaggerated of a scene, but Cooper reminded me of that because he just plays so hard, and every picture that you want to post of him after a game is just, his hair is just soaking wet. He always looks exhausted. The reason I bring that up, I think that the reason he missed the shot was because he was just so tired. And anybody who's ever played basketball, when you're playing pickup all day long and you're in your 6th or 7th game, that your legs are tired. What do you do when you're tired and you go to hit a jump shot? You kind of overcompensate because you're tired, your legs aren't underneath you. That's why I think Cooper was tired. Did he jump on the shot? Yes, but I think where the tiredness affected the shot was that he's having this internal struggle to where he's overcompensating with the jump, and he's got to recalculate how hard, like how much effort does he want to put into the jumper. That's why you saw it come up short. And it didn't make sense because he did come off the ground. I think there's just like an internal miscalculation that he had where I'm tired. I got to hit the shot. I'm going to leap so I have a clean look. You have to kind of recalculate, relocate, re-angle your form, your positioning, all that stuff. I just think that he was tired. Now, he did finish with 27 points on 8 of 19 shooting. He hit 3 of 4 3-pointers, and he was perfect from the line, 8 of 8. He had 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, and 2 steals. And he choked. Like, come on, guys. We got to really hold other players on this Duke team accountable. Malawash with a 0 rebound effort. Tyrese Proctor, an absolute no-show in this game. And, I put out last week that I think he's a second-round pick. I still feel that way. Why? Because you don't make an evaluation off of one game. But this is a reminder why he hasn't always been a prospect, why he hasn't been that number one or the first-round guy that we wanted him to be 2 cycles ago, while he's kind of been in this like back half of the second round, potentially undrafted guy. It's because of performances like this. Now, Sion James had a moment, big scary moment. I'm surprised he actually still played because he came down really hard on the back of his head. I don't know how fuzzy he was of that throughout the game, because that's where we started seeing these mistakes to where Coach Shire trusted him to come up, past half court and make decisions like a lot. They really steered away from Con Knippel, which is my biggest gripe of I would say the coaching strategy of Coach Shire, was that they really just steered away from Con, who had a really good game, and they put the ball in Sion James's hand. He couldn't inbound the ball to Cooper Flag, throws up a very risky pass, and really make some decisions that allowed Houston to claw their way back in this game. I don't put this game at the feet of Cooper Flag, even though you probably should, because he's the star, and that's what you have to do. D. Jota said people were saying Braun wasn't clutch for years off of a couple of moments. I wouldn't rule Flag out of that. D. Jota, I agree. Now we can really peel layers if you want to say like LeBron was a prodigy where he was going to come in and potentially be the best player in the NBA. I don't think that Cooper Flag has had much of that. I don't think very many people are going to say Cooper Flag is coming in to the NBA to take over it. I think that he could be like a top 25, top 30 player. He has that. but LeBron was the prodigy, right? He was supposed to be the guy to take over the face of the league. I think that's where you get into different conversations. We won't go into that now. This isn't ESPN, but we'll take one more break real quick, and then we will get into the moment that everyone's waiting for. We will preview tonight's game. So hang tight. We'll be right back. All right, so let's talk about the game that's coming on tonight at 8:50 Eastern over on CBS. Tonight in San Antonio, Texas, the Florida Gators and Houston Cougars will be playing. Florida is a -1.5 to win this game. I don't feel confident betting against Houston. I want to say that right off the rip, but I do like Florida. Houston has the front court, though, to match up against Florida. Now, Houston has Roberts, Tugler, Francis. Numerically, they're at a disadvantage to Florida, who plays Chinyalu, Condon, Hauk, and Handglotton. Condon doesn't seem like himself. Handglotton really hasn't been as impactful as I wanted to see. This is second season since transferring in. I really thought that he was going to be more impactful. He does play in the rotation. He's had some key moments, but I really wanted to see more from him. Then you're kind of wondering which Thomas Hauk are you getting? Are you getting the one from this past weekend, or are you getting the one from the weekend before? It's kind of hard to guess that. And the backcourts between these two teams feel about even. I feel like I trust Walter Clayton Jr. more than LJ Cryer, but Cryer is just capable of games like the one that he had against Duke. Now, something fun I did in preparation for this show, I want to leave you guys with a little bit of a strange analysis. We'll dive into this, okay? So LJ Cryer hasn't scored consecutive 20-point games this season except twice, and they came in the style of three-peats. So another way I can maybe reword this is that LJ Cryer hasn't scored multiple 20-point games at all unless he did it 3 times in a row this season. Now, if you're looking at the game log, how close were the three-peats from his last 20 points game, you feel like he might be closer to this 17-point median average that he kind of comes down to. If you look at just like the trend analysis of the game log, if you will, but he is capable of going off. We just saw it this past week. Maybe tomorrow, even though it's the last season of the game, would theoretically be that second game in the three-peat style of 20-point performances that he has. Who knows, right? Elijah Martin does feel like a good guard for Florida to have in a Houston Cougar game. And you wonder, does he defend LJ Cryer? Does he defend Emmanuel Sharp? Or does Will Richard draw Emmanuel Sharp and then allow Martin to guard Milos Uzan, who might be due for a big game, right? And then who does Walter Clayton Jr. guard? Do you want him to guard the best shooter on the other team, or do you maybe want him to draw the Milos Uzan assignment? You get fun in that. And then I'm having this like internal psychological breakdown with myself. Should I just bet against Houston out of spite, where they've proved me wrong for so long? That do I just continue to bet against because eventually they have to lose? Or do I say this might be the one time where betting against Houston is right? If I am for Houston, now all of a sudden are they just going to let me down? So that's a fun internal struggle to have. If you want to dissect which team has the best player overall, kind of like NBA playoff style, which team has the best player? It's got to be Florida, right? With Walter Clayton Jr., he is just having a lights out tournament. He had a good performance last year against Colorado. This year, he's had just a genuinely awesome tournament. People are comparing him to some of the best guards to ever play in the NBA. So which direction do you want to go with that? If you look at the coaching advantage, I would say it's got to go to Kelvin Sampson, even though Coach Golden is no slouch. If you want to say, well, typically the best teams that win have experience with their backcourt, I feel like that's probably a dead heat between these teams. One thing that I have been very, kind of adamant on is that size is going to win, except Houston being the only team in the tournament to continue to prove me wrong. You feel like Florida has a size advantage, but are they as nasty as these Houston Cougars? Do they have that proverbial dog in them? How probably does. Outside of that, Condon doesn't feel right. Hanglutton, not a guy who I would say is a dog, but is particularly skilled. And Eric Olson in the chat say I feel like guard play carries the day in a lot of college games. I agree. Which which guards do you think carry the day? It's hard to sift out that backcourt. Ultimately, I'm staying away from this. I wouldn't bet this game if you asked me to. But if I have to pick, I'm gonna go with Houston. I feel like Houston by 4 feels right. I think Coach Sampson just feels like he's due. Golden still has plenty of time to get himself a ring. Coach Golden just feels due. Every week there's just like this new little nugget about how he's turned this Houston program around. It feels like they're doing it kind of the right way. If you want to look at what recent championship teams have looked like, they do have their LJ Cryer that transfer in, but they've kind of built it from within. They've built this program from within. A lot of people will tell you this is what you have to do in the transfer portal or in high school recruiting in order to win. Houston winning feels like they would just be sticking it to the system, and everybody kind of loves that story. It would be a very UConn-based approach in a sense, and they won back-to-back titles. So I think the blueprint is set for Houston to walk away victorious. D. Joda in the chat says, go, Gadget, Tugler, standing reach is center size, though. I wouldn't worry. He is a very go Gadget on defense. I hope that he goes and hits some shots tonight against Florida. I think this is a fun game, though. I think if you have a rooting interest in, college sports, kind of sticking to this customary way of being, you root for Houston. If you're rooting for NBA draft prospects, I think that you're probably pulling for Florida. It should be a very fun game. I think that it's an interesting clash of styles, and the old adage, styles makes fights. I think the offense of Florida is cutting edge in college basketball. I think they're cutting edge on the transfer portal process, bringing in the right types of players at certain skills and meshing them. But they're just nasty. They're what Dan Campbell wants the Detroit Lions to be. They bite the kneecaps off of their opponents. And even if you win against Houston, you don't feel good about it afterwards. The human-sized cheese graters, I think, is what we called them the other day on a show. I'm going to say Houston by 4. I don't feel good about this. So if you're going to bet, please do not blame me for any outcomes. Unless you win, then you can give me all the credit in the world. But that's going to do it for us here over at No Ceilings. I want to thank you all so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hang out with me. Please, if you're on Twitter, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I see a lot of people watching me. Some of you might be on Twitter. Please go over to YouTube, look up No Ceilings NBA. Subscribe there, because you're going to get our live shows. You're going to get our podcasts when they come out live, when we live podcast. Hit a like button, because that really does a lot for us to grow. We've been growing all season long, and it's because of the fans out there. So I do give y'all a lot of credit. If you are one of these rare fans, though, that likes our work, follows it a lot, please go over to the YouTube channel. Consider subscribing. Even if you don't watch, just have it on in the background. Hit the like button. Go over to NoCeilingsNBA.com, where we have daily content for you on the regular. Again, we have our big board coming out. That's going to be huge. We're going to have some notes continue to pour in from Portsmouth next week. This week we got Hoop Summit going on. We got some in-depth individualized pieces. I'm going to be having an Elijah Martin article, which I'm so stoked to be coming out right whenever it seems like his star is rising now. So just go over there and watch that. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Be kind to each other. We'll catch up with y'all next time. Much love, y'all.